Welcome to the TrackPads Military Podcast, where history, leadership, and heroism come alive. Today's episode explores the life and final stand of Corporal Henry Fred Warner, a powerful story of courage and perseverance on a frozen Belgian hillside. If you enjoy learning more about military history and extraordinary individuals, be sure to visit trackpads.com for articles, podcasts, and more. Corporal Henry Fred Warner was only 21 years old when his determination helped stop a German armored thrust in the winter of 1944. He served in the anti-tank company of the 2nd Battalion, 26th Infantry Regiment, part of the famous 1st Infantry Division of the United States Army. His weapon was a 57mm anti-tank gun, a towed artillery piece designed to knock out enemy tanks at close range. Over 2 desperate days near the village of Dom Bütgenbach in Belgium, Warner repeatedly engaged German armor under heavy fire, and his actions would earn him the Medal of Honor, the highest American award for valor in combat. By December of 1944, the war in Europe seemed to be turning decisively against Nazi Germany. Allied forces had broken out of Normandy, liberated much of France, and were pushing toward the German border. Adolf Hitler and his generals planned one last major offensive in the West, aimed at splitting British and American forces and forcing a negotiated peace. To do that, they chose the Ardennes, a region of forests and rolling hills in Belgium and Luxembourg, where American lines were thin and quiet, and where a surprise attack might break through. The German offensive began on the 16th of December 1944, with a massive artillery barrage, followed by armored and infantry assaults. Poor winter weather grounded much of the Allied Air Force and helped German units move forward during the opening days. Many of the American units in the path of the attack were inexperienced, under strength, or spread too thin along a long front. In the confusion that followed, certain crossroads, villages, and ridgelines became critical points of resistance that would determine whether the offensive could be stopped or would tear open the Allied line. One of those vital areas lay on the northern shoulder of the German advance, where American units blocked key roads leading toward the city of Liege and deeper into Belgium. There, elements of the United States First Army, including the veteran 1st Infantry Division, dug in on frozen ground to stop German panzer divisions, armored formations built around tanks and mechanized infantry. By standing firm on this northern shoulder, these units kept the Germans from easily turning north to threaten major supply depots and transportation hubs. Holding that ground was essential to blunting the entire German operation. Near Dom Bütgenbach, the terrain created a harsh and deadly battlefield for both sides. Open fields and gentle slopes gave American gunners clear lanes to fire on approaching tanks, but also left them exposed to enemy observation and artillery. Small patches of woods and scattered farm buildings offered cover and concealment for German infantry and tank crews as they probed for weak spots. In the deep winter cold, with snow on the ground and freezing winds cutting across the hills, every foxhole and gun pit was both a lifeline and a trap. Within this setting, the 2nd Battalion, 26th Infantry Regiment positioned its anti-tank company to cover the most likely routes of German armored attack. Light 57mm guns, like the one manned by Corporal Warner, were placed to hit enemy tanks as they crested ridges or moved along roads, where their sides and running gear were more vulnerable. The mission of these crews was simple to describe and hard to carry out: stop or slow as many enemy vehicles as possible, and buy time for the rifle companies and the artillery behind them. On an exposed line like the one at Dom Bütgenbach, the performance of a single gun and its crew could shape the fate of a battalion, a division, and an entire sector of the front. Let's continue our journey through history. Henry Fred Warner was born on the 23rd of August, 1923, in the small town of Troy in Montgomery County, North Carolina. He grew up in a close community shaped by the Great Depression, where school, church, and hard work were part of everyday life. Like many young Americans of his generation, he watched global events turn from distant news into personal duty as war spread across Europe and the Pacific. In January of 1943, with the United States already fighting overseas, he enlisted in the United States Army from his hometown, answering the call to serve. Warner's military path eventually led him to the European theater as a junior non-commissioned officer responsible for both equipment and the men who served with him. His role in an anti-tank crew demanded technical skill, calm under pressure, and the ability to lead by example under fire. On the battlefield, rank titles like corporal often meant that a young leader had to make quick decisions with life and death consequences for those around him. Warner's story shows how someone far from the high command could still influence the outcome of a crucial fight. His life came to an end on the 21st of December, 1944, near Dom Bütgenbach during the bitter fighting of the Battle of the Bulge. He was only 21 years old when he was killed in action, one of many individual losses that together made up the immense human cost of the war. After the conflict, he was laid to rest in Southside Cemetery in Troy, where his grave became a local place of remembrance for family, friends, and community members. In time, his legacy extended across the Atlantic, as a United States Army installation in Bamberg, Germany, was named Warner Barracks in his honor. On the afternoon of the 20th of December, 1944, Corporal Warner and his crew waited in a shallow gun pit beside their 57mm anti-tank gun, covering a likely route of German approach. When German tanks and infantry finally pushed forward, he directed his crew's fire calmly, bringing the gun onto the lead Panzer, a German tank, and adjusting until a round smashed its track. That hit crippled the tank in the open, stopping it where it could no longer press the attack. A second tank tried to continue the assault but was driven off by repeated hits that convinced its crew to back out of danger. With their armored support halted and taking damage, the accompanying German infantry began to fall back under American fire. Warner's gun had bought the battalion precious breathing space, turning a dangerous armored attack into a stalled effort. That first day's fight showed how a well-placed anti-tank crew with good leadership could influence a battle far larger than its own small position. In a war often measured in divisions and corps, the actions of one crew on one slope could still matter greatly. Warner understood the strengths and limits of the 57mm gun he commanded. Against heavy German armor, its rounds were most effective against vulnerable points like the tracks, the sides, and the rear rather than the heavily armored front. His gun position was exposed enough to see the enemy clearly, but dug low and narrow to make it harder for German gunners to locate and destroy the weapon. Each engagement demanded patience and nerve as he waited for a tank to move into the right position, judged the angle, and then ordered fire at the exact moment when a shot might stop a machine weighing tens of tons. In the early hours of the next morning, the German forces returned in greater strength, sending 4 tanks with infantry support toward Warner's sector. The winter darkness was broken only by the flashes of gunfire and the glow from tank exhausts as the leading vehicles opened up with cannon shells and machine gun bursts. Under that storm of fire, the gun crew around Warner was shattered, with several men killed or wounded, and Warner himself seriously injured. Despite his wounds, he stayed with the weapon, refusing to abandon the route he had been ordered to hold. Now alone at the gun, Warner had to do the work of an entire crew. He loaded rounds into the breech himself, swung the barrel to track the lumbering shape of the lead tank, and fired while incoming fire shook the ground around him. Shot after shot, he corrected his aim and stayed on target until his rounds found their mark. Eventually, his direct hits ignited the lead tank and turned it into a burning wreck that blocked the path and lit up the battlefield. The destruction of that lead vehicle stunned the attacking force and forced the remaining tanks to reconsider driving into what had clearly become a deadly killing ground. Even as the other tanks began to pull back or maneuver more cautiously, enemy fire raked Warner's position so intensely that it seemed certain the gun and its emplacement would soon be destroyed. Only when the fire became overwhelming did he finally leave the battered weapon. He moved into a nearby foxhole where infantrymen were already clinging to their positions under the same barrage. From that shallow hole in the frozen ground, Warner continued to fight, this time with his rifle. He engaged German infantrymen who were trying to use the confusion to move closer to American lines under the cover of smoke and shattered snow. He was killed there, still firing, continuing to shield his fellow soldiers by denying the enemy an easy advance. His final moments were defined by the same resolve that had kept him at the anti-tank gun, a refusal to give ground while his battalion's line was under threat. Over the course of those 2 days, Warner's stand was credited with disabling or destroying 3 enemy tanks and helping to break repeated attacks against his battalion's position. His actions helped deny the Germans a crucial opening near Dom Bütgenbach and kept the northern side of the Battle of the Bulge from being pried open by armor. For the soldiers who watched him stay at his post under impossible conditions, he became a powerful example of what determined small unit resistance could accomplish. In the broader story of the Ardennes, his last fight was one of many acts of courage that together stopped the German offensive from achieving its goals. Corporal Henry Fred Warner's story shows that leadership in combat does not depend only on rank or age. As a junior non-commissioned officer, he had no control over the entire battle around Dom Bütgenbach, but his determination at a single anti-tank gun helped shape the outcome along his battalion's front. His actions highlight how small units and individual soldiers can become critical decision points during a crisis, especially when the enemy believes surprise and superior technology will carry the day. The way he stayed at his post under fire reflects a style of leadership based on example rather than authority, the kind that encourages others to stand fast even when fear and instinct urge them to fall back. His story offers a timeless model of courage turned into direct, practical effect on the battlefield. Ethically, Warner's final stand captures the tension between duty, self-preservation, and responsibility to others that soldiers have faced in every war. He understood that remaining at an exposed gun position under tank and artillery fire might cost him his life, but he also knew that withdrawing would leave his fellow infantrymen exposed to being overrun. His decision to keep fighting, first with the anti-tank gun and then with his rifle, speaks to a deeply rooted sense of obligation toward the men beside him and behind him. For people hearing this story today, his actions invite reflection on what it means to accept personal risk for the safety and survival of a wider community. His sacrifice reminds us that ethical choices in combat are often made in moments, under intense pressure, and later remembered through the lives they helped save. For modern military professionals, leaders, and even civilians far from any battlefield, Warner's experience offers lessons about preparation, resilience, and clarity of purpose. His effectiveness at the anti-tank gun did not come from bravery alone, but from training, discipline, and a clear understanding of what his weapon could and could not do. In high-pressure situations, whether in combat, emergency response, or complex organizations, people who combine technical competence with steadiness under stress can change outcomes for entire teams. Warner's refusal to abandon his position, even when wounded and alone, reflects a mindset of staying committed to the mission until the task is done, not until circumstances feel comfortable. That blend of skill, grit, and devotion to others remains relevant to anyone who may one day face their own moment of decision, when their choices affect more than just themselves. Corporal Henry Fred Warner's life and final stand near Dom Bütgenbach remind us that the direction of great battles often turns on the actions of a single determined individual. From his roots in Troy, North Carolina, to his last moments at an exposed anti-tank gun on a frozen Belgian slope, his story combines proficiency, sacrifice, and a quiet sense of duty that held firm even under tank fire. His actions helped blunt a key German thrust during the Battle of the Bulge, protected his fellow soldiers, and left a legacy strong enough to be honored with the Medal of Honor and remembered across generations. When we remember his name and tell his story, we keep alive the example of a young corporal whose courage helped hold a line when it mattered most. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of the TrackPads Military Podcast. If you would like to dive deeper into more stories of bravery, leadership, and history, visit trackpads.com. Until next time, keep exploring, stay inspired, and remember, the lessons of the past shape the warriors of the future.